Heyo, happy Sunday.
All right, try again.
Oh, yeah. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DU Raw.
Correct. That's how raw this is. It is Sunday morning, and I am happy to say that my two co-hosts from the East Coast are now suffering through 8:30 in the morning with me. So this is a nice start to the day. Good morning, everyone. Glad that you could join me. I know normally you're around lunch by now,
Yeah.
but it is definitely nice to have you here. It's an exciting day. It's Sunday. I've been sick for fucking like 3 days. I wasn't here on Thursday, just kind of took the day off and then let my body do whatever the fuck it was going to do. And now I'm feeling better and I'm back. Nose a little bit red, admittedly, but feeling good. Happy to be here. Excited to catch up on Patreon after this. I am especially excited because I got sick and I'm getting better. And that all happened before Denver. Like, I'm fully on the mend. You know, by the time we get to Denver on Thursday, because Denver's happening on Thursday, I'm going to be fucking feeling great, ready to smoke my fucking heart out. And considering I haven't been smoking for the last 3 days, I'm going to get real fucking high. So I'm very excited. If anybody is out there and you would like to join us in Colorado, I am happy to say we only have one ticket left. We have one ticket left, and it's for a king bed. A private king bed on the top floor, right next to the bathroom.
Solo room.
Fucking great room. If you would like access to that, you can get it on the website, dualisticulunity.com. Just click on the event section. Remember, if you're a Patreon supporter, you can save $350, $150, or $50, depending on your tier. And if you would like to save an extra $200, then you can do so with code 420Colorado, all one word. And that is the only code that we have available at the moment. So you can save what, $550 on this, and you're coming, you're being fed, you're being taken care of, we're watching movies, we're playing pool, you're being entertained, you're getting real fucking high, and you're spending a bunch of time with the three of us.
Right.
It's going to be a blast.
It's amazing.
Do consider coming down if you can. Otherwise, November is going to be the next big one.
Absolutely. Hell yeah. Summertime in Denver. Beautiful time. We were there last year, similar time, and it was a it was a eye-opening experience for sure. Because like the retreats are this environment where it's like just opportunity, opportunity to chill and be yourself, and like has the potential to maybe see different sides of yourself too, and like sometimes that's what's best for you in that experience. And so yeah, you never know what you're going to get, but there's so much opportunity there, and so many things to do. And there's some dope restaurants nearby too. Yeah. We went to that breakfast spot last time. That was near the because we did the mini retreat before last time also, and that was maybe that was in between, but yeah, there's some solid solid restaurants.
And a grocery store not too far away. I think that was one of my favorite parts last time was the line of ants that we did. Like all of us were just in like a single row.
It really was
walking down the street with stuff in our hands. It was fun.
Sticks and leaves back to the den, to the nest.
Yeah, that was really enjoyable.
For 10.
That was the mini.
It was a different. It was not the Kishkisha location, but man. Fantastic, because it's essentially the same opportunity you have at home, but it just doesn't feel as easy. You get to show up and not have to be anything for anyone, including yourself. And people always think that the retreat has to be all this work, and it's like a lot of work could happen, but it's not the point of going, and it's not that it's supposed to be this vacation that you're just mentally checking out. It's just that you don't have to be anything. You don't have to be the idea. You don't have to try to get people to like you. You don't have to be always available. You can take time for yourself. You can go for a walk. You can decide to write a poem in the kitchen. You can make a snack. You can play the game. Like it's the same opportunity. There are so many options on the table, and you can pick any of them, and no one's expecting you to pick one or two, or you don't have to join everyone. So I love that. When we were at Kushcation before, there were definitely times where I would find someone just sitting in the living room by themselves, right? They're at this retreat. It's full of cool people. And yet they're just sitting by themselves, just having a moment, just relishing the solitude of that minute by themselves. And then sometimes they're like looking to have a conversation. And then they happen to bump into someone who is already talking about what's on their mind. And they're like, oh my God, I was just thinking that. And it's amazing because it's just opportunity. And it is going to be a blast. I know I'm looking forward to making the most of it, and I'm going to be so high. And we've got the sanitized glass bongs that they provide. The clock is always at 4:20, which is the perfect time. They've got the old stove so you can have hot knives. I'm like, this is marvelous. Yeah. So I highly recommend it, and I look forward to whoever gets that king suite. Long may they reign. A new king rises.
Amen. Oh yeah, nothing but yeah. No, it's super excited for it. So yeah, Denver,
absolutely.
420 Colorado. That's the discount code.
420 Colorado. Save an extra $200, which means you save $550
on top of Patreon.
Gotta be fucking dope. Just saying. I wanted to get into something a little bit because I don't know. It came up the other day in Patreon, and it's such an easy trap to fall into. That there is something that you are attaining, understanding, embodying at any given point. And while we use those words to describe it, and we really do like run around it, it almost betrays the point, which is why I'm so in love with Krishnamurti's expression that the messenger is always a traitor. Always. Because you can't talk about reality without making it fiction. I can't describe my experience to you without totally bastardizing it. Yeah. I can't communicate to you what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing, what I really mean. I can't, because as soon as it's a concept, it becomes superficial. As soon as it's an idea or a word, it becomes surface. And surface alone, open to interpretation. And if it's open to interpretation and you have no choice but to interpret, then words are never the truth. Then whatever idea you have of this or reality or authenticity, whatever it is, that's not it. What it is what remains. What it is what we're already doing, what we already are. And this is so important because otherwise you end up thinking that being on this path somehow has changed your value, despite the path being the recognition that your value is immeasurable. It's like, well, I know that. Therefore, I'm better now. It's like, no, your options have just changed. That's all. Nothing has actually gotten better or worse, but your options have changed because there will always be the experience of feeling better or feeling worse, regardless of your state of mind. There's always going to be the experience of being challenged and torn down or raised up. There's always going to be that. So none of them are actually better. It's kind of like in the Tao Te Ching, like there's something always smaller than small. There's something always larger than large. Everything is relative. We don't exist in this state where it's so easy to define, so easy to describe. And so as soon as we have this idea like, yes, I'm in the recognition was the word that was used. And I get it. I get what that means in the recognition. And as soon as it's said, it's gone. Because whatever that recognition was, isn't. It's not that. Because if it's a recognition, it's not reality. You can have a recognition. You can't be in a recognition. Right? Recognition is what? Presence?
Attention.
Yeah.
Which isn't you recognizing anything. It has nothing to do with you. If anything, it's almost a mindlessness.
It's not definitely not a destination where you hit this point of recognition. We're like, I've figured it out. I know the way. I have certainty. It's like, no, if anything, it's a recognition of things that have just clicked, right? Something's clicked. Now I know. There's so much more there's so many new considerations, right? And I will take those new considerations as I'm paying attention to what's happening in this moment, but I don't actually have a recognition that gives me, that's a silver bullet that will always give me certainty going forward. It's just, I can recognize steps taken. I can recognize lessons learned, but that doesn't mean that I'm in a state of perpetual recognition where it's this destination, this promise, this mental promised land.
Something to maintain.
Yeah.
And that's it. That recognition. Because then it's like, as soon as you have it, it's, or like feel like you got it, then it's like, well, I gotta share this. I gotta spread this. I gotta, convince other people of this thing too. Again, it's like a way, like if we're always looking for ways to feel better, like that's what we kind of, the process of growing up, like a lot of the self-esteem message is like ways to feel better. And so you can use just like a moment of like, where you're relaxed and maybe you're not thinking about so much. And you're like, oh wow, this I gotta share this thing. And then it's like, as soon as it becomes about you and it becomes this thing where it's like this, it makes me feel better about myself. And this is another way, like, getting really, developing into a great musician or a great, athlete or anything, like really good professor or good in school, like any of those things, it can become this very conceptual thing that's like, that's not it. Like that's not it at all. If anything, it's just like there's nothing to do about it. Like it doesn't change anything inherently. It just, there's less hesitation, I think, to jump into new experiences, to do different things that maybe you held yourself back from because, you had this idea of yourself that you were, focused on, and this sense of like, and not even that, it's like more of a sense of value, like where your value lies. And with that not part of the equation anymore, then there isn't so much concern as you do things. But it's not about like spreading that message well, because you can get really fixated on trying to like say the perfect words instead of just, being relaxed and expressing whatever that relaxation is right there, and like not being concerned about what's said or what you do, and just kind of like going on a rant and being like, well, this is out there, it's going to be interpreted differently by everyone. There's no way to control that. So might as well, it's like, there's something, I'm not gonna worry about it. And if anything, like that's, I don't know, like more of it. But again, it's like it's not even it, because again, like you were saying, like as soon as you're talking about it, it's like there's no way to say it.
No. But the problem is that if you have an idea of it, then you go looking for anybody who validates that idea, which is why you end up with speakers who speak in the most monotone, regulated tone, where there is no emotional inflection whatsoever. In fact, there's no sign that they're at all bothered or ruffled by anything, except perhaps raising their voice. And that's the point, is you get an idea of this and you start looking for other people who embody that idea, and those people are happy to fucking sell you whatever validates that for a certain price. Mm-hmm. They are happy to fill that in because you're validating them as well.
Yeah.
Right. And so the question really becomes this: what are you doing? What is this about? Is this about becoming enlightened? Is this about being able to look at other people and go, I see what they're doing wrong? Right? Or is this about just being yourself? Is this about some, picturesque kind of mountaintop Shangri-La experience where you aren't actually human anymore? I mean, what is the difference between aspiring to that and waiting for heaven after death? You're still squandering what you have right now.
Right.
And right now, what you have is a full experience, conscious, biological, the whole fucking bit. You've got emotions, you've got thoughts, you've got perspectives, infinite perspectives. Mm-hmm. And you get the benefit of sensitivity, touch, smell, taste. You get all of this. And yet we're sitting here looking for something more.
There's got to be something more.
But we don't want something more. We want something controlled, right. Something pleasant. Mm-hmm. Something that's calm.
Something specific to us.
Something that doesn't make me feel lost. Mm-hmm. And in that, we separate from everyone, because perhaps your confusion and you being lost is what somebody else needs to find their fucking way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when it's not about you, then it's like whatever you show up with is on the table. Because like we don't know, like feeling really good about yourself, expressing something super well. It's like a lot of times that is very disconnecting. Someone who's like, is looked up to, like that's the goal, it's more like, because that's then something you maintain, and that's then something, or you try to maintain, and everything becomes about that instead of that, like, playing the fool sort of thing, like being absurd and ridiculous. Like, and not taking yourself seriously. Like, there's a number of people that I see out there who like really don't take themselves seriously, and they're enjoyable to be around. Like, people appreciate that. And someone who is, taking themselves super seriously, it's like, that's not going to be a very enjoyable person. And if you're taking yourself seriously, you might not enjoy being with yourself.
Right.
It's like, so you can stop that.
It's crazy how
who are
often
you
that's the
doing it
case.
for? Exactly. Like, who are you taking yourself seriously for? It's like maintaining this, or trying to maintain this thing that you can't maintain, trying to maintain this perspective of yourself that like you can't, because again, everything's going to be up for interpretation. You don't even know what you're expressing, really, because it's going to be based on who's hearing you, like what they're hearing. And like, someone could really appreciate someone like messing up a bunch, or stumbling, or like being willing to just be relaxed and express, and like, oh, whatever's there, whatever. And then, yeah, we can just chill.
But that's it. See, that's the funniest part about all this, is that we get caught up in this idea, like, no, I need to get out of my suffering. But then that becomes such a fixation, and for good reason. For good reason. Suffering sucks.
Right.
I get it, and once you start to realize, oh fuck, there's a rhyme and a reason for a lot of my suffering, you almost get this idea that you should fix it instead of just keep looking at the rhyme and reason. Because the more you look at the rhyme and reason, the more you start to realize maybe you should leave your suffering the fuck alone, because it's informing you. Maybe you shouldn't be trying to get rid of it. Maybe you should be experiencing it because it's not something to fear. But that's the point, is we spend so much of our time running from it. We spend so much of our lives fucking suffering through it without anybody telling us, oh yeah, it's that fiction in your head. Right? That finally, when we do start to realize that, there's only one thing for us to do: get the fuck out. And it's like, no, you've already got it. This was the point of the video I made earlier this morning. You don't actually have to take the recognition and then apply and go and try and fucking physically do something with that. Like, yeah, I need to keep it in mind all the time.
I need to face it.
You've already had the recognition, which means it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. The next time you get caught up in your shit, you're going to go, I'm taking myself seriously again. But if you beat yourself up, if you beat yourself up for that, you're never going to have that recognition again, because you're going to be too busy trying to get somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just having that recognition, and then like continuing to be yourself, and understanding like why you take certain things seriously, and then like taking them for what they are, and just like continuing to live your life too, and like Jay, not taking things seriously doesn't have to be a serious endeavor. Exactly. Like, it doesn't have to be this drudgery through like, oh, I'm doing the work, I'm going through stuff.
But then how do I judge people who aren't, quote unquote?
Yeah.
I can't. And that's the payoff. And I know it's fucking uncomfortable and nobody wants to admit it, but the fact is that's a lot of what we're looking for. We're looking for another way to feel better about ourselves. We really are. It's our habit. It's our default. So all of a sudden somebody comes over and they're like, hey, you're equal to everyone. You're like, well, I'm a little bit more equal now. Right.
I'm equal, but special.
Exactly.
I'm like, that's not, if that is the case, equal and special, then everyone would also be equal. I mean, everyone would also be special. But we think that because if everyone's special, then that doesn't really make me special.
Yeah.
And I think that's the assumption. But it's like, life is special. When you walk out into a forest and you're amongst all the plants and animals and insects and all of that, everything in that moment feels special. No one plant feels more special than the other. And in their individual beauty, it all adds to the collective fullness of that moment. And so you don't think, oh, this tree needs to be taller, it needs to bear more fruit. It's that everything is taking up the perfect amount of space. Everything feels like it's all interconnected. And it doesn't feel like because the whole forest feels special, that each individual thing is less special.
No.
Like they never felt that way. But when I think about people, I judge people more because it feels like that's what I'm supposed to be doing, and that's what I accept. That's what I accepted, and that's what I want to do because I want to believe. I want to believe that there could be one special person that's more valuable than the others, because the fear is that I don't have value. But that's just a fear. And there's no way for me to be sure. And so I was reading this book the other day, was How to See, and I forget it was like Thich Nhat. What the hell?
Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yes,
Yeah.
Thich Nhat Hanh. Thank you. And he was in one of the pages. It's like, are you sure? Like, are you really sure about your beliefs? And it's like, no matter how strongly I hold on to a belief, I'm not entirely sure. And if I'm not entirely sure, then I'm not certain. If I'm not certain, what did that all of a sudden happen? No, I've always been a little unsure. That's always been the case. And that's never stopped me from enjoying a moment. That's never stopped me from feeling the fullness of each moment. And it doesn't have to be this big, grand, spectacular fireworks kind of thing happening all the time for a moment to feel special. I was just reflecting on this morning, where I was thinking about my life and how it's changed, and how it's not that I have more uncertainty than before. It's just that it looks different. The uncertainty looks different, and so it feels different. And so I could easily say that I'm more uncertain because changing career paths, changing country of residence, changing all this. But the uncertainty amount has always been the same. It's always been all uncertain. But it looks different, and because it looks different, I want to say that it feels different. But it's not actually different. And without any of that certainty, my life still feels incredibly full right now, with none of the guarantees, with no assurances, with no promises from anyone, and not needing it. And so when I'm thinking about, this feeling of wanting to be special, and I'm hearing about these celebrities, and I'm hearing people that are saying, I don't, it's funny because people will promote something not knowing that if you promote it, it's only because you agree. And the only time you ever promote something that you don't agree with is to contradict it, to express what you do agree with. So you're never sharing something you don't agree with. Like, that's always happening. You're never like coming from this like objective perspective where it's like, I'm coming at this from a fair place. I know how to be a third party. It's like, you can't be. Everything's going to flow through the lens of what you agree with, and what you agree with, you can't be sure of. And so it feels like it doesn't have the weight that it used to.
We had a quick question here. So you mean the whole spirituality thing is a sham? Like, it doesn't matter even if you don't know it, correct? And it's just more or less because somebody just made that shit up at some point. You really got to remember that. Like, there are no actual chakras, right? Like it's really easy to get caught up, but you're talking about, something that somebody went, yeah, I seem to put a lot of energy and attention here and here and here and here and here. And somebody else went, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And somebody else went, well, maybe we can expand on that, because that's actually a really good way of explaining our emotions and how they're connected to our body.
It's all here.
But the point is that you can do that. You can do that in your own way. Maybe you have 67 chakras. Maybe you have one. Who knows? But the point is that it makes sense to you based on your experience, based on your journey, based on what actually has meaning to you. Because that's what this is. This is existence. This is about your existence. And it's very easy to try and chase concepts and forget what those concepts are about. The concepts are meant to be describing something, but we get lost in the concepts.
Yeah. And it's kind of like yoga, right? Like, yoga is this thing that was developed over time from someone just like feeling, what things kind of work, because they're just like messing around, stretching their body and stuff. And then it becomes this thing that has like specific moves. So if everyone's unique and everyone has like unique bodies, unique ways of walking, unique ways of living, existing, all that stuff, like, there's not going to be a one size fits all for anyone. Like, there's no one size fits all whatsoever.
Different types of yoga.
Yeah, exactly. And those have been developed over time, but like, just the willingness to like lie down and stretch and do stuff, or like do some balancing stuff, or recognize and have some sensitivity for like, where's something that I could, where's something that's tight on me, and then stretching that out. And it's the same with like, with the food stuff. Like, I used to track calories pretty closely. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter like how hungry or how full I felt. What mattered was like where my calories were for the day. And
Right.
so if I was like, had this goal of like, say 2,000 or 2,500 calories, and I was at like 1,800, but I was full, I would like eat more to get there. And then if I was, you know, at 2,500 and I would feel hungry, I wouldn't eat anymore. Instead of it being this natural, whereas now I'm more just like feel it out, so much more sensitivity to it. And so like now, if I, not that I track anymore, but like if it was at the 1,800 and I'm full, it's like, you know, stop. Exactly. And then if I'm a little more hungry and there's like a natural sort of balance to things, but we get in there and try and, you know, control it and try and do something about it and think that like we can mitigate that uncertainty every moment, and we can like create lives where it's like I have a very solid idea of how tomorrow's going to go, still totally uncertain, but like I can think that it's going to be the same. Meanwhile, like something absurd could happen. Like you could drive and get it. I always go to the death stuff, which it's like anything could happen. But yeah, it's like we try and mitigate that. And how much does that close us off? Like you're mentioning this morning, that article about, you know, all kids being basically born creative geniuses.
Hell yeah.
And then over time we get like taught things, go through school,
Concepts.
and like year after year after year, that creative genius diminishes.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, because at one point, a tree to a child was a fucking wonderland. Like it wasn't just a tree.
No.
It was a potential fort. It was a potential
Whole
staging
universe.
for an act with monsters and shit. Perhaps it was a place they talked to birds, or they, you know, had a vision of living somewhere else on a different
It was
planet.
sanctuary during a game of
But-
tag.
but you know what I mean?
Safe, I'm safe. I'm safe. I've told you the
But
truth.
it was so much until finally we're like, it's just a tree. It's just a tree. It's like, well, what does that even mean? Because then what happens? You grow up, say you have an interest in trees. You grow up, you go to university, and then they tell you everything you know about trees is wrong. Welcome to the complicated world of fucking trees. And that whole time you've been told it's just a tree by people who think they know that, having never actually studied trees. Because it's simpler to fall back to the concept. It solves this problem of uncertainty for our brain, and our brain doesn't like uncertainty. It wants to take a nap. It wants to relax. It wants to do things the easy way so it can conserve energy. But does that work? If you're always conserving energy, do you ever build muscle mass? No. So if you're always conserving energy in your brain, are you actually exercising your intelligence? Are you expanding your awareness? Or is it just your body trying to take the easy way out to keep you alive?
Just trying to maintain something, maintain a perspective of yourself that feels good, and like develop this perspective of yourself where you feel good about yourself. And it's like there's a trade to that. It's like you have to focus on yourself, like to feel good about things. You have to think about stuff where it's like, I feel good because of this, because of this, because of this. And then you build like a physical day and reality around that. Or it's like, I do these things because they make me feel good about myself. I don't feel great about myself. I'm going to do something to feel better about myself, instead of looking at like, why don't I feel great about myself? Instead of immediately going to like, you know, do all the things that makes you feel better. It's like, wait, why is there this underlying not feeling great about myself? Because it's like that, it's like we trade one certainty for another.
Yeah.
And it's like we just go back and forth in that realm, like, which is like a cyclical maintenance process instead of being, you know, growth and development and evolution, which can't come from trying to maintain something. I mean, maybe to some degree, but it's definitely tougher to do.
Yeah. Now, that said, we had somebody in my comment section here. I don't know if you're watching yours, but somebody here had asked
Sideways.
what our opinion of the Terrence Howard interview on Joe Rogan podcast was. I'm assuming they're talking about that. They said Terrence Howard podcast, but I don't know if he has his own podcast. All I know is what I recently caught from Joe Rogan and looking at Terrence Howard's paper. I think it comes down, as always, to just being careful about what you want to believe and why. Terrence Howard is presenting his thoughts and the way that he sees the world in a way that you want to believe it. Like, he wants to believe it so very badly, and he brings it across in a way where it sounds very credible. And if you don't want to go and actually suss it out, if you don't want to actually go and look it up or do any actual research into it, then it's easy to fall into. And that's kind of the point, is that he's very convincing because he wants to believe. But that doesn't make it true in any way, shape, or form. And so I would say the Terrence Howard thing is, it's fascinating. And maybe there is something there in terms of some of the things that he's sharing. But on the other hand, there's just an immense amount of grandiosity. Like, he really is making it about him. Like, he was a child genius. And as we just identified, every child is fucking genius when it comes to creativity. He had a patent on virtual reality tied to virtual augmentation, but that's not true. It wasn't a patent, it was a patent application. And he goes on and on about how many companies have cited his patent application, but that's actually part of the process of applying for a patent in the United States, is that you have to cite everybody who's ever applied for a patent with the same idea. You actually have to give paperwork and references to everybody else who's had the idea to prove that your idea is unique, usable, and not fucking obvious. So citing his paper as having existed, or his application as having existed, doesn't give him credit for the invention. That's ridiculous. But it was definitely sold that way. The other thing that, and again, I want to give a shout out to Yam Socks from TikTok. If you've not checked out Yam Socks, go check out Yam Socks.
Also a guest in season 2 or 3.
Somewhere. Right. Fucking great episode. Mm-hmm. Great episode.
Fantastic.
Building bridges.
And while I don't necessarily vibe with a lot of the spirituality aspect that Yamsocks often focuses on, I love his analytical brain. I love the fact that that kid fucking knows what he's talking about in terms of math and everything else. And he will explain to you very simply that our way of counting isn't the way we think. Like, we use set theory. And what I mean by that is, if I have 2 apples, I don't actually have 2 apples. What I have is 2 sets of 1 apple. See? That's what I have, or 2 sets of 1 apple, or 1 set of 2 apples. Okay? But technically, I'd never have 2 apples because everything is just 1. It's just itself. Okay? So we use that in a mathematical convenience. We go, well, there's 2 of them. There's 3 of them. There's 4 of them, but that's not actually the case. There are 4 sets of 1. And that is how our math works. And what Terrence Howard is saying is based on some assumption that that's not how our math works. And the simplest way to explain that is his view of the word multiplication. That because we use the word multiplication, that our math must stick by that word, despite the word, the concept, being an oversimplification of what's happening. Right? So to Terrence Howard, 2 times 2 equals 4. Therefore, 1 times 1 has to equal 2. But he's forgetting that 2 sets of 2 is 4. And 1 set of 1 is 1. Right? Which leads to his next misunderstanding, which is of square roots. Because he has a real issue with the square root of 1. He's like, well, if you square root 1, it comes up to this decimal number. No, it doesn't. The square root of 1 is 1. Because when you're doing a square root of something, you were looking at what would I have to multiply against itself to get that number. So the square root of 1 is 1. That's it. It's just set theory. It's not complicated, but it sounds real complicated because none of us have actually thought about fucking math. Like, none of us have thought about math because we got drilled with it in high school. We did everything we had to do to pass. And then we just moved on with our lives. And so all of a sudden somebody's coming over and going, have you thought about this word and that's not being used correctly? It's like, no, I actually haven't, because I didn't give a fuck. I was just trying to pass math and get through. But if you are interested, go and learn set theory. There's lots of information out there. It's the basis of our math and has been forever. It's really important to recognize this. This predates the invention of zero. That's why zero took so long for humanity to come up with, because it doesn't actually exist. What we have are sets of 1. There is no nothing. So that's the point. is that when you look at math for what it is, we're counting sets of one thing. So that whole argument that Terrence Howard is making, while it sounds really good, and again, performed by a fantastic actor, it just doesn't hold up. And the reason you know it doesn't hold up is because anybody who actually has gone to school for this will tell you it doesn't hold up. And they'll explain to you why. They will explain it to you. They won't just say, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is because of this word. They'll walk you through it. They'll teach you. And I encourage you, because I've reached out to people. I've been like, what? It's worth questioning. Because it came up on Discord this morning, like, you guys got to check this out. I've seen the document. I've talked to people about it. I get it. Like, it's interesting. It's great. And it's not to say that there aren't certain things in there. Like, one thing I enjoyed about Terrence Howard's conversation about the periodic table was he was saying that, like, look, the way that we've designed this really has no rhyme or reason that I understand. But all of these different elements also have frequency. So why can't we take frequency and also apply it to the periodic table? That's a great question. Ask a scientist.
Right.
But if you ask a scientist and then they tell you, well, this is why, maybe take that in. He was talking about a paper that he sent to Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Tyson sent it back marked as a research paper. Like, he actually marked it. He put red ink on it. He did the whole thing, explaining this. Terrence Howard just laughs it off.
So he's not even willing to take it in.
Well, that's his argument about Neil deGrasse Tyson. Oh, he's not even willing to take it in. It's like, he did take it in.
Yeah.
And he argued with you.
Yeah.
You know, and he pointed out his points.
Yeah.
That's cognitive dissonance.
But that's exactly it. But no, it's just I'm an unrecognized genius. And that's the danger. That's the danger, because we all are. It's not untrue, but it gets muddled by our need for self-importance. As soon as it's about you, you should be fucking skeptical. Like, as soon as you're like, yes, I'm getting it. I am very, back the fuck off.
Yeah.
You know, just wait. And that's the point about this stuff, is that if you really want to believe it, like, if you really want to think Terrence Howard is onto something new, it's going to revolutionize the world, it's going to fix everything, right there, you should be like, hold up, why do I need to believe that? What am I looking for there? What silver bullet am I chasing now? You know, and just because something sounds good, it makes you excited, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be skeptical about it. And I mean this as somebody who has gone down a fuck ton of rabbit holes. I mean this as somebody who's lost a lot of friends who suddenly dug into something that wasn't based on fact and defined themselves by it and fucking lost everything in their life because of it. Lots of this stuff is out there, and it all sounds real fucking good until you start realizing, like, oh, right, I'm just avoiding the responsibility of being here. Terrence Howard can't save me from my life. Science can't save me from my life. You know, the fact is, your life is here now. That's the important part. And the only thing you can do is really understand whether or not you're trying to make it about you or trying to make it about life.
Yeah. And, you know, at the very least with something like that, like, I haven't seen the interview or looked into it yet to this point, but it's at least like making me interested a little bit in getting into math again and like trying to understand it. But like, it's interesting how we'll try and make things just about us and like feel good about ourselves and just looking for something to like prove that we're worthy or express this like genius like he's doing in the interview, and like coming up with something that sounds cool and interesting. But digging into things like that, it's like, it's fun to explore that stuff. And I've certainly gotten like almost caught on the side of like not wanting to look into stuff as a means of like, because I know it doesn't mean something about me, but it's still like fulfills your life, you know, like looking into something like that or looking into, you know, some historical type stuff. Like, what is life about if not just like exploring those things? It's just, it doesn't mean something about you. It's not like, well, now I'm an expert in this and now this becomes my thing. It's like, that's gonna take away from like just continuing to explore and like taking things in as you go, which is what life can be about. But as soon as it means something about you, it's like you get out of the river you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is my thing now. Like I'm an expert at this. This is my life. You know, I'm a expert in this field, or I'm this type of person or that type of person. And it goes from like, you know, professions to just, I am what I am. Like I am this type of person who does these types of things. And it's like, then it becomes again, like maintenance of that, or like, how good can I get at being this instead of just being more, being whatever you are, and like letting that play out and like letting that happen. Because otherwise it's like, it's maintenance. It's just continued maintenance throughout your life and trying to prove yourself and like feel good and get pats on the back.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, like, look at how much of our culture is based on this, though. I mean, scientific history in itself. How many times throughout school were you told this person invented this, this person invented this, this person invented this? And even people in the field of mathematics and science, at some point, especially in the early 1900s, were on a race to be able to put their name on an invention.
Yeah.
You know, this was a big competition for them. You know, notoriety, fame, that whole thing. Well, immediately you have to be suspicious. It's like, okay, so did you just stop looking after you came to this wonderful theory?
Most of the time, yes.
Right? Like that was the whole point. This is why I love the fact that Einstein's theory of relativity is still in question.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's still, because it's not complete. And he knew it. He even said, he's like, I don't know. Because there are a bunch of things that are just unknowns. But that's the point, is he still got credit. We still go, it's Einstein's theory of relativity, despite the fact that it's just a working theory of relativity by humanity. Like we keep wanting to give credit to people instead of looking at this as, right, we're all in this together. Like we're all kind of advancing together. And isn't that funny? It's just, it works so backwards, because then all of a sudden we're putting so much of our attention, so much of our energy, so much of our focus towards getting that carrot, towards making it about us. How much are we losing that could have actually went towards insight? How much are we losing that could have went towards taking our time to suss that invention out a little bit more before we put it into production and create all kinds of toxicity? You know, how much would it change our perspective of what academia is all about? Because it really is about who came up with what in a lot of cases, more than what we've come up with. You know, even in philosophy and spirituality, this is the case. Like if we talk about the fact that your awareness and my awareness and all of our awareness is one awareness expressed through the perspective of division or duality or all of that, immediately you're like, oh, that's a Hindu thing. That's Buddhism.
What religion are you guys? What are I can't figure you out.
Right.
Like, oh, what's Buddhism? Is that what it is?
And that's the point, is that we just want to give credit to someone because we want credit ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's trade every time. You know, it's like, oh, I'm this, you know, I follow Buddhism, like so quick. It's like and I'm Buddhist. Like it's self-validating. Anything that's self-validating, I, you know, am this type of person, have this perspective, like, and people want to be able to box people up. People want to be able to like understand people. And so even as people change, it's like, it's almost can be like difficult to see someone differently, you know, to change. Like we try to maintain our perspectives of people. And so there's, again, it's like cognitive dissonance. If someone is expressing something differently, it's like either you got to just not look at that or judge them or do something relative to like, you know, your own perspective. But it's, yeah, it's fascinating to see it play out for sure. And yeah, I totally lost my train of thought.
No, you were on a roll there. Yeah. I'm going to pass it over to Amanda, see what she's got.
Oh, well, I mean, we're always looking to feel better, and it makes sense because feeling better, in feeling certain, we assume that we would feel better. And so I make all these attempts to feel certain based on that assumption, even though it's never actually happened. I've never gotten to a place where I knew something, was entirely certain about it and felt better, because there was always that bit of doubt. There's always, there is no secret answer. There's no hidden knowledge for me to find. And all of a sudden, once I have that knowledge, I'm going to feel better. But, validation is like the horizon. It's a destination I'm never going to get to. And even when I have people validating me, it still is hollow, because I know that people are only validating me in the process of validating themselves. I'm just a means to an end. And I know that I use other people as a means to an end. So I feel the bullshit as it's pouring out of my mouth, as it's pouring into my ears from other people. I can tell, because I make up those fantasies to feel better and just to escape from being here. Every time I think about a fear or an anxiety or something that I'm hoping for, all of that is not here. And so when that pops up, I'm like, yeah, but that's not actually happening. That fear isn't happening. That anxiety isn't happening. That fantasy is not happening. None of that is actually happening. You know what is happening? I'm sitting on a chair right now, for this specific example. You know what is happening? I am having a conversation. That is happening. But that in and of itself isn't making me feel better, but it also isn't making me feel worse. But when I think of myself, it immediately falls into one of two categories. I'm thinking of myself and I feel good, or I'm thinking of myself and I feel bad. But it always goes back to the same thing. I'm thinking of myself and not the moment that I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's a perfect example. And this has come up in the comment section right here. We're back to the math thing, okay? So
Okay.
It comes down to, I'm thinking about this from the perspective that I want to understand something new. I want to understand something mind-blowing, profound. And so I'm going to take something that I've never really thought about and just assume that it is profound. We have this question. Okay, hold on. If I ask a bank for 4 times 4 quarters, they'll give me $4. And if I ask for 1 times $1, I'll get $1. Now, here's the fun part about all of this. Before I get into any of the math or anything whatsoever, there are no such fucking things as quarters and dollars. What there are representations of cents. Get it? Okay, so a dollar just represents 100 cents. It's a set of 100 individual cents. A quarter is a set of 25 individual cents. We just use them as representations. They're concepts. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so if you go in and you say, I'd like 4 times 4 quarters, then what they're really doing is looking at the fact that you just asked for 4 sets of 25 cents, or 4 sets of 4 times 25 cents. So you're asking for a lot of cents. And if you add up the cents, if you let go of the idea of quarters and dollars like they're separate things, because they're not, and you actually just do the math, if I ask for 1 times 100 cents, I get 100 cents, or $1, right? If I ask for 4 times 100 cents, I get 400 cents. You see how it makes sense when you just break it down? But when you're talking about concepts like, dollars and quarters and dimes, none of those things are the things that you're thinking about. They're not separate things. Like a dime and a penny aren't different things. They're still different. They're just different ways of counting the denominations of 1 cent.
Yeah, because they're all just representations. So everything, and like we can get really fixated on conceptual things, like thinking they mean something. And like, before talking about a tree, for example, like tree is just being a tree, it's like, no, but it's a representation of something, of something there, instead of, or like a chair isn't just a chair, like it's a representation. And just like anything, and when you really break it down, it's like all those concepts don't mean the things we think they do, but they represent something, and they're like a means of convenience. But like, then if we focus on figuring out the conceptual with more concepts, it's just gonna like spin us around, like spin us into a loop of like figuring this thing out. And then like, again, immediately it's like, what are we trying to do here? And like hyper fixating on certain theories or certain things. It's like, it's an exciting thing to dig into and to discuss and talk about. But like, at the end of the day, like, what is, like, how much are we trading if we're trying to like make something mean something about us, instead of just, digging into it, because like that's, your experience is, what you are, instead of what you know or what you accomplish or how people see you. But like, we can definitely fixate on just achieving more, accomplishing more, like feel better about myself, feel better and better and better and better. And as soon as you do, it's like, I got to maintain that. I got to hold on to that. I got to continue to prove myself. Or then it's like, I have something to live up to. If I've proved this theory, then people are going to look at me as, super smart and intelligent. And then it's like, there's going to be this expectation for yourself and this weight to like act like a smart person all the time, or intelligent or well-spoken or whatever it is, instead of like letting yourself go a bit and like being able to be relaxed. Yeah. Make the trades.
Yeah. And again, like it's just that urge to want to feel something about ourselves. Like we are getting it. We know something. We are important now. Our value is somehow shifted. Right. And that's the only reason we want to believe this shit without actually thinking about it. Mm-hmm. It's the reason there are flat earthers. There's no difference between this Terrence Howard shit and the flat earth theory. Okay. They both come from the point. It's like, listen, it's scientific. And they explain their point with great enthusiasm. Okay. Total conviction. Mm-hmm. And anybody who's just listening for that enthusiasm and conviction buys it. It has nothing to do with what they're saying. It has nothing to do with the science, because if it did, you wouldn't just believe it because it feels good. You'd actually go and suss it out. You'd go and do the research. This is something we hear all the time about all kinds of shit that we do. We're like, oh, if you do this, if you go out and you act like this, if you talk like this, if you wear these things, if you drink these things, if you eat these things, these are all bad for you. These are all signs of this. You don't know shit. You just want to sit on a fucking pedestal so you can feel good about what you're doing. That's all you want to do. And if you can't be honest about that, then you're going to be gravitating towards all of these fucking theories for the rest of your life, looking for something that makes you special, makes you important, and at the same time ostracizes everybody who doesn't believe your bullshit. That's why it's so important for people to call you on your bullshit. It's because there's an opportunity for you to go, oh, maybe I'm just making this about me. And you'll know by how much it bothers you when somebody questions your bullshit. When they actually say, well, hold on, I have a question. And you're just not listening. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, I've got questions. Mm-hmm. There's no difference between, again, any of this stuff when it comes to this bullshit with Terrence Howard, flat earth theory, spirituality, religion, like it's all the same fucking thing. I just want certainty.
Yeah.
I just want someone to explain this to me. I just want somebody to tell me what it is so I don't have to think for myself. And then I can go out and judge everybody who doesn't know it. And I can go and judge everybody who doesn't believe the same thing. And I can judge everybody who's not agreeing with me. And I can judge. The point is I can judge. The point is I can make it about me. This is why it's so fucking important. When you have an insight that you are being inauthentic, let's say you're in a conversation with somebody and you say something and the other person goes, oh, I think you're just self-validating. That person was just self-validating. You can recognize that somebody is saying something to feel good about themselves without you using it to feel good about yourself. All right? You can just take it in. But you won't if you want to feel good about yourself. You'll fucking use anything. What you eat, what you wear, how you talk, where you live. It doesn't matter. You'll use fucking anything. And it's because you're needy. You're needy. You're immature. You don't feel like enough. And that's so much of what we're going through because we've been raised in a system that's told us we're not enough unless somebody's looking up to us. Unless your name's on a paper. Unless fucking society's dictated that you're famous and worth listening to. It has nothing to do with your own inherent value. It has nothing to do with how well you're living your own life. It's all about how you're seen. And if it's all about how you're seen, then it's all about how you see yourself. And as long as that's the case, you can't take in shit.
Yeah. You're always going to be blinded to some degree by something, focusing on some perspective. And again, it's like just to maintain a sense of feeling good about yourself and like trying to just do more things to maintain that. And it's that I said it a bunch of this. So, but like maintenance, it becomes a maintenance and it's like some perspective and then just doing your best to try and continue to have that same perspective. But if it's about that, it's about everyone else. Like, you live your life based on everyone else, and it's really not about your own experience. It's about your perspective based on other people, instead of it being based on, like, right now, how you doing? Like, right now, what's your experience like? You know, and like, any opinions you end up getting about that is like taking you, like, something that's taking you from this experience, but then it's like those opinions get validated by certain perspectives, you know, you want to maintain about yourself. And it's like that is what gets in the way of, like, continuing to experience, you know, all of life. Yeah.
I just want to say quickly, maintenance is a great word. Like, it really is. It's an ongoing effort. Like, you just have to maintain. This is what I've been saying about our idea of ourselves forever. It's not that you just form it. You have to hold it. You have to build it up. You have to protect it when it's threatened. It's fucking exhausting. It's exhausting to the point where you're never actually looking at yourself. You're never actually living your life. You're always looking outside yourself. You're always looking for some way to compare yourself to an assumption. Always. You can't get out of it until you go, I don't need to feel better. I don't need a silver bullet. I don't need to, because then you're actually being informed by things, right? Like, this is the thing. Like, I'm not a vegan. Yeah, I'm not a vegetarian. You both know this.
Sure.
Do I eat an excessive amount of meat?
Not in my opinion.
Right? No, I don't. Why? Because I recognize that some animal is dying for that. Okay. But if I were to just go, and that's bad, I'm going to become a vegan. Now I'm tuning out all the fact that animals suffer. Well, not just animals, plants suffer too.
Yeah.
I'm also tuning out all of the things that go with that vegan argument, because there's a lot, right? And it's just, why? So I can define myself and feel better. That's all it is. So what is the alternative to defining yourself? Taking in the information, finding equilibrium. You take in the information, you adjust accordingly. You know, you find out something's not necessarily good for you. You don't immediately go out to vilify everybody who's still doing it. You take it in, and then you take in the fact that you didn't know for a long fucking time. And what's worse is that maybe you can't change it. Maybe, for example, there's a health change that you'd like to make in your life. You'd like to eat something more healthy for you. You realize that you can do this and that most people aren't. So now you go out of your way to make that health change, despite the fact that it's profoundly more expensive for you to do so. But maybe you come from a comfortable life with a family that supports you. Maybe you've got a good cushion. So you're not really worried about your expenses. But then you run across somebody else who's barely making it work with 3 fucking kids, single job, paying rent, doing that whole fucking thing. And they maybe can't afford your very healthy choice. And in your mind, you fucking judge them for it. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, if only you'd switch to this, it'd make a profound difference in your life. Yeah, and if only you weren't such a fucking superficial prick, that'd make a profound impact in your life.
Right around. Yeah. Because, like, oh gosh. Because, like, just to have that, that perspective, and, like, continue to have that, like, this is the right way. This is the right way to act. And I need to see everyone as either in this dichotomy of, like, doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And it's like, everyone, like, we can't know each other's situation. We can't put ourselves in someone else's shoes, but we can, take our own shoes off for a second and, like, see other people and see, things for what they are, and, like, maybe not hold on to so many perspectives about, like, oh, I'm living life the right way or the correct way, or, like, this is the perfect way to eat, or the perfect, morning routine. And then it's like, you're simultaneously, like, letting go of the judgment that you have of other people and the judgment that you're holding on to about yourself, that you're not even, like, willing, you don't even want to look at, because you're doing all these things to, like, cover it. And it's like, there's uncertainty, and then there's perspectives of yourself on top of that, like, maybe you don't love or that you judge. And then it's like just building something on top of that, but immediately it, like, it cuts you off from everyone and puts you on a spectrum of, like, how well you're living life. instead of just, just living it, and like not having this need to like feel better by judging someone for what they're doing or how they're acting.
Now that's the argument I've heard in response to this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, aren't you judging people who are judging? It's like, recognizing you're judging doesn't mean I'm judging you. You just feel like I'm judging you because you're up on that fucking pedestal.
That you don't judge from up there.
That's right.
You know?
Like that's all it is. Like that you feel like it's judgment because that's the soup you swim in.
Yeah.
That's why. And that's all it is. It's like, well, I'm feeling torn down by this. And stop putting yourself up. You won't feel so fucking torn down.
Yeah.
But it's so tempting to want to put ourselves up. It's so tempting to want to feel better than others. And we have a lot of excuses, man. A lot of reasons, especially in positions where people work under you, for example. All of a sudden you think to yourself, well, I'm the manager. I'm the most important person here. It's like, yeah, how important is a manager when there's nobody to manage?
Pretty hollow.
Right?
Not doing a whole. That
sounds almost like everybody's got an important role. We again, our culture's kind of fucked that way because we really do place a lot of value on self-importance. A lot of value to the point where we have golden parachutes for CEOs that don't do shit. Meanwhile, we have people working their bag off in the mailroom that get minimum wage. Like stuff like that. But who gets the recognition? Who gets the money? It all goes to in the same direction to whoever's the most important.
Right.
Despite the fact that nothing would run if it wasn't for everyone else. Right? Isn't that interesting? So it really just comes down to self-importance as a whole is, I guess, the clearest and most present danger to be aware of. And it's so easy to do if you're just willing to be self-honest. Like if you're just willing to go, okay, maybe I'm just trying to feel like I'm doing better than other people here. Maybe I'm trying to feel like I have the right path. Maybe I'm trying to get over the fact that I feel like I've been fucking up until now. And that's really, kind of the lesson is not to go, I've learned something new. I need to change my life and everybody else needs to change their life. It's to go, right, but my life was fine up until now. Mm-hmm. I can make this change and it doesn't make me better at all. It doesn't change my value at all. It changes my life. Like if I can eat healthier food, my body's probably going to go through, less indigestion, stuff like that. I'm going to experience that. But on the other hand, am I sure? And I will once again cite that that study was done on the rabbits where 10 groups of rabbits were inundated with a high cholesterol diet. 9 of those groups of rabbits all showed the fucking signs of a high cholesterol diet, increased, or not increased, but decreased health, arteries, the whole thing, gain weight, high blood pressure, all that. One group of rabbits didn't. Why? Because the person who was taking care of them would take the time while feeding them and afterwards to love them. Wouldn't just feed them, put them back in the pen, but actually spent some time with them, changing how their physiology responded to the food that they were eating. Now, if that's the case, then that leaves a giant fucking question mark about everything. Because we can say, yeah, GMO food is fucking brutal. And that is correct. But we are immediately making an assumption about our inability to heal it, about our inability to adapt to it. Like if we didn't have an ability to adapt, we'd be so very fucked. So very fucked. Look at Teflon. Look at all of these indestructible chemicals that are superfluous in our culture right now. The Great Lakes have antidepressants in them. This is something that's measurable now. This is our fresh water supply. We're adapting all the time. Our body is adapting all the time to the difference in our air quality, difference in our water quality, difference in the level of sound that we're surrounded by. 200 years ago, there wasn't this much noise. 100 years ago, there wasn't this much noise. There was no such thing as fucking air travel. There was none of that. There was no way to travel 200 kilometers an hour. All of this is taking its toll on our body. All of this is causing us to adapt. And yet it's our idea of ourself that goes, no. I got to do it a certain way. We don't know. We can't know, but we can assume. And why do we assume? Because it means something about me.
Yeah, we can assume that we will feel better. But ultimately, we're just here, and we're never going to be entirely sure. And it just doesn't need to be. When I think about being corrected in the middle of a conversation and having someone tell me that I either am not aware of some new information or that I mispronounced a word, I've gotten into the habit of saying thank you. Like, I'm grateful because I no longer hold on to the concept of being an intelligent and by intelligent, I'm therefore by default important person. And so I just think of myself as a sponge for information. And so getting new information is great. It's welcomed, but it doesn't change anything about me. It doesn't make me more important. It doesn't change what it means, or like what I think it means about me doesn't change. I'm just getting new information. So I'm like, thank you. I did not realize that there was some new information, and I clearly have not been reading up on the newest developments of this topic, but it doesn't mean anything about me. I'm not defined by the information that I absorb. So getting new information, being corrected doesn't matter, because being wrong isn't this avoidable experience. And so I'm just appreciating what's available. But before, I used to get really upset if someone contradicted me. It was like I had to die on that hill because I picked that hill, not because I knew what the hill was, just because I picked it. And because I picked it, now I will die on this hill. And instead, now it's like I'm on this hill right now, and somebody's like, have you seen the new shrub on this hill? And I'm like, there's a new shrub on this hill? Holy shit. Where is it? Oh my God. And since we're speaking about new shrubs, did you see the other hill that's next to this? And I'm like, oh, fuck, that's awesome. And I have no problem moving on the landscape of topics, because I'm not sticking to one because I've just picked it. Because I'm never entirely sure what that hill is, what it means, where it's going to go, how is it going to change, how long should I be on this hill, why am I even here, how did we get here? Like, we're not thinking about that. We're just appreciating where we are and then just moving as our attention moves. And the more we pay attention, the more sensitive I become. And being sensitive, I can see, okay, this hill feels a little like there's no grass on this hill. I'd like to eat. Maybe it's time to move to another hill that has a tree that bears some fruit. But I'm not staying on that hill because this is the best hill. And I'm not going to leave despite how uncomfortable it's starting to feel. And I'm not going to pay attention to how uncomfortable I feel, because I've picked this hill and it means something to stay on this hill.
Oh, yeah. And it's like we're born onto certain hills too, and we don't even realize like how much. And then it's like all you see is people, what that hill does, and we're developed in as much as we're people going through stuff, we feel individual stuff, like we're products of environments, right, too. And like, that's something that when you look at that for what it is and be like, oh, a lot of these perspectives just stem from the way that I developed, like how I saw myself throughout time, how other people were seeing themselves. And then just to match that, like as young children, it's like we have very few influences in our life, but there's a whole world out there. And a lot of times, we won't explore what that is, because it's like leaving that specific hill because you find something else out is uncomfortable. It's like the journey through the seeing a new hill. It's like, oh, this hill is, nothing like another hill that I've been on, but like there's so much there, and there's so much more experience there, because you can try and stay on that same hill and just maintain that with the same sort of perspectives of things. And I think there comes a point where it's like it's again just like trying to match what's done on that hill, despite everyone on that hill being different and unique, and like that, again, that trade-off. But like you find out some new information or something, and it's like, why not? Why not explore that? And it's again, going through that exploration can be uncomfortable. Like there can, because it doesn't feel as controlled or certain, or like these guarantees that certain things may have promised. It's like, oh, now more is on the table. There aren't so many guarantees. There aren't all these senses of like certainty and control and security and whatnot. But you start to realize like, oh, having all of that there was weight there. You know, there was something that was there that like, maybe I don't need. Maybe there's another way to experience life that isn't based on just trying to, you know, maintain a sense of security and certainty as you go. That's exciting.
Can be.
And with guarantee comes control. You know, you think about all the advertisements you hear, and it's like 100% guaranteed to grow your hair. 100%. And it's like, there's a high likelihood, you know, but they don't want to say that in an ad because they're trying to sell you a guaranteed result. They're trying to say, we know the formula to control the circumstances to guarantee a certain result. So they're basically selling you control in school, in your ads, in your life. And that's full of shit. But you don't know a scam until you actually admit that you believed bullshit.
Because you want to.
And it's because you wanted to. You wanted to believe the scam. And so I love my first introduction to a lot of the self-questioning came in like my early 20s when I encountered this philosopher, Vernon Howard, who was around in like the 70s and 80s. And one of the things that he said that resonated with me was that, you know, you are the first liar you believe. And what I guess what I had took from that was, you know, I can't be hustled. I can't be scammed. I can't be lied to until I first sell the lie to myself. Because if somebody walked up to me right now was like, I've invented gravity, and I'm going to be like, that's a big claim. That's a big claim. You're just like, that's a big claim. So that statement wasn't believable to me because I just decided it wasn't believable, right? But if somebody came to me and was like, I have redefined mathematics, and I'm like, oh my God, they redefined mathematics, and I believe it, then their lie can continue. But it's only because I sold myself the lie first that they presented. And then I sold it and bought it myself. And then they just reinforced the lie. But it's so easy to, in retrospect, say they lied to me. It's like, yeah, but you bought it first. You were literally the first person who bought it in your mind. And that's the only reason why they could resell it to you over and over a period of time. So it's just that's that personal responsibility, is that as much as you want to blame other people for misleading you, for making you born on a certain hill, we have the capability to look around us and to see where we are and to take in where we are and to then be sensitive enough to know what makes sense for us, given our certain set of circumstances. Where do we want to go next? Not, is this a one size fits all? Is this a silver bullet? Is this something that can be validated? No one can validate an experience that's unfolding as it's being created. You just can't. No one can help you say you're on the right path, because they'll never know what's right for you. In the same way that you'll never know without doubt, but you at least have the greatest sensitivity. You have the greatest access to seeing where you are and then seeing what makes sense for you given a certain circumstance. Because what makes sense for you and individually today may not make sense tomorrow. But that doesn't mean that yesterday was a sham because it doesn't make sense today. It's that circumstances change. Pay attention. And as you pay attention, you can see what makes sense for you in one moment, and then not hold on to it like that's your silver bullet for every moment that's going to follow.
Well, but that's kind of the thing, right? It's just to be able to recognize that. It's just to look at it and not, like, if you are born on a hill, let's just say, and then you realize you were born on that hill, right, and you get off the hill, you don't have to vilify everybody on the hill, right? Just get off the hill. That's it. But most of the time, you're just like, how dare you all put me up here? You're all full of shit. And it's just like, and at the end of the day, it's like, you could just learn that and move on. Right. You can just take that in. But that's often the atheist argument. This is one thing I always find funny about the theist and atheist argument, is often they're arguing about the same idea of God, which is hilarious. Like, they're both on opposite sides of the same fucking hill, arguing about the hill, when they could just get off the hill. And you don't have to argue that the Christian God isn't real. That's like arguing that Santa isn't real. Yeah. Right? Like, that's a hell of a stance. But if you've been hurt by Christianity, if you've been You know, if you think that you've been manipulated by Christianity, you've been raised under a fucking illusion, your first response is to vilify the people that you thought fucking did that to you.
Yeah.
Instead of going, well, yeah, but I went along with it. True, I was too young
Yeah.
to know better,
Of
but I know
course.
better now. Why am I going to keep going along with it, even in vilifying it?
Yeah.
I could just learn, or I can make it about me. That said, we are at the end of this episode of Dualistic Unity Raw. We are going to be on Patreon after this. If you can join us in California, again, remember, you can save an extra $200 on that ticket. Use code 420 Colorado, all one word, in conjunction with your Patreon code, and you can save up to $550 on this Colorado mini retreat. This is our last mini retreat in 2024. We're not going to be coming back to the States for a bit. So if you would like to see us, this is the time, and I will explain what heart knives are later. That's it for me, everyone. We're going to sign off.